Hi, good afternoon. We're here live again from Philly Market News, and I'm so honored from across the country to have a special guest today who's the top leasing agent in San Francisco. She works with Compass. I sent you guys information about her. I'm just amazed at what she's done there in the market. Rubinchik, and she's, as I said, I think it's important to understand she comes from a background of finance, tax advice, very knowledgeable about helping people with investments. She has over 70 investment properties herself. As she told me this last week. I hope you don't mind my sharing that. I'm not trying to tell any secrets here. But in working
No
with the
worries.
luxury market in San Francisco, it's so hard right now to know what the impact of COVID is on the market. And what the problem is by the time real statistics come out, will be like after the fact. So, statistics always look backwards and they're going to be skewed because of our shutdown periods. So I think it's more helpful to hear from the streets, so to speak, from our luxury agents and experts nationally, what trends are starting to see and as a result of the pandemic in terms of lifestyle, desirability of certain areas. One of the big questions, are people still going to want condos with amenities? Has that the attraction of it, because that's huge. A luxury condo is all about the amenities. And just so you know, she has a huge team, but she personally doesn't handle any rentals under $6,000 a month. So just to give you an idea of the level of clientele that she's working with. Again, I'm sorry I'm telling secrets if that's the case.
No problem.
And in the links below, you'll find all her contact info, Facebook, Instagram, her website. Please read, and her contact information is below. But a big question that I have, and discuss this with a couple other agents, like I mentioned, from Miami and from Connecticut, and we're going to talk about Center City condos later in a couple weeks. What kind of feedback, what kind of trends are you seeing with your clientele in terms of lifestyle? Have things shifted in terms of desirability of certain types of properties? Are you seeing an exodus to the suburbs? Or, I know it's early, but if you can, what types of things you're seeing and what your thoughts are about that.
Well, thank you for having me on, Susie. I'm very excited to be here. Actually, most of a lot of what I do lately, since the shelter in place has started, is being on podcasts and seminars and web conferences with people very interested as to what's happening in the market, what's going on. And San Francisco is just such an important market. It's such a unique market. So I've been doing a lot of that. So I appreciate you having me on your show. So what's happening in San Francisco? It's kind of still early to tell. Here's what we're seeing. We do have a lot of condos that they've built in the Soma, South of Market area, and obviously all these people are living in those boxes right now without any amenities, without really being able to go anywhere for that matter, because Soma is kind of a newer neighborhood where there's still a lot of, it's pretty empty in the evenings and at night because they haven't still built out a lot of the sort of neighborhood feel. It's in the works.
I'm sorry, can I just
And
put just to translate for us in Philly, Soma, I used to live in San
Mhm.
Francisco, lived there from the early 80s to 2000. That area is kind of similar to the Loft District in Philadelphia. Big old
Okay.
warehouses that have been converted to condos. So just as a point of
Mhm.
information to help us. Sorry.
Yeah, there are a lot of warehouse conversions into lofts, but there are also brand new high rises that they will build. Millennium Tower was the first one in 2009, and then they start popping up like mushrooms after the rain. Basically, there's this humongous 600 unit Lumina building, for example. So what I'm seeing right now, what I'm sensing is that. Um, People wanted proximity to work, people wanted the newness factor, people wanted the amenities, but with all of that missing right now, because in all these buildings the amenities are closed, people are definitely reconsidering their options, especially families, especially people with children, somebody who has to work from home now, and the children have nowhere to go really. I mean, there's nothing out there's no parks. You could go walk down Embarcadero Street and just look at the water, but how often can you do that?
Mhm.
So I think my prediction is once shelter in place is lifted, I'm already seeing it a little bit, that people just there's just going to be an exodus out of there, massive exodus. I'm hoping to be these people's Moses. That's kind of my my goal in exiting those buildings. But people are moving across the Bay Bridge to Montclair and Piedmont, because that's where the good schools are. And it's just, again, it's the same trend all over the country. The yard, the outdoor space, just the interior space, and the most importantly, the neighborhood, because the neighborhood is an amenity in itself. And you walk out of your home and you go left, and there's the gym, and there's a Starbucks, and there's a bagel shop, and everything you want. You go right, and there's your nail salon, and there's your favorite bar, your favorite restaurant, whatnot, right? So these amenities are becoming, because honestly, how many people really who have a gym in their building really use it?
True.
Yeah, really? You don't really use it because it's right there. So you're like, oh, you can always use it, but you never do, right? So yes, Lumina, for example, has a 7,000 or 9,000 square foot gym with a saltwater pool, which sounds awesome, but very few people get to it. And now that it's closed, and you have to ride the elevator with somebody up and down, so it's becoming a challenge. So Marin County is becoming a lot very popular because it's across the Golden Gate Bridge, for those who don't know, and that's a very upscale premier neighborhood
Mhm.
with great schools. So a lot of people are going to be moving to Marin, and there are a lot of people who be moving to true neighborhoods in the city. I'm getting in my sense, the Pacific Heights is going to be popular. The Richmond, for example, because I personally live in the Richmond. It's a place where the locals live, and we are a block and a half from Golden Gate Park. It's a neighborhood that stretches on the north side of Golden Gate Park, and Sunset is a neighborhood that stretches on the south side of Golden Gate Park. So it's incredible because we can go to the park, we can go jogging, we can go biking. I mean, anything you could possibly want. It's a huge park. It's larger than the Central Park in New York. So there is a beach about mile and a half away. So it's becoming significantly more important. The other thing I'm seeing is that my children go to private school, and what we are seeing is enrollment is down in private schools because a lot of
Oh,
families own small businesses, and for them, it's becoming very difficult to pay for private schools. So they are moving out to Peninsula, to Marin County, to East Bay. So there will be for better because the schools are better than in San Francisco, and there will be a huge pressure on those schools. They already have max capacity of kids, and they're going to have to probably open additional classes because a lot of families are going to be moving out there, and there will be a huge contraction in private schools. So I'm seeing that as well. But yeah, we'll see, because the thing is also they've built a lot of apartment buildings in the city, high rise, brand new high rise buildings like Crescent Heights built Nema and Jasper. There is the UDR buildings and Equity residential buildings, and what they've done is that they are targeted towards the young professionals who just pretty much moved to San Francisco out of college, although most of them can't afford them, but that's kind of the idea. And they made the units extremely tiny. I mean,
oh.
350 to 400 square feet. I'm going to tell you a really funny story about it. I was touring one of these new buildings. It was, I believe, 45 unit um, building with amenities, a rooftop gym with a view, very nice. But the units were so small. I mean, literally, the office slash closet I'm sitting in right now is larger. So I'm walking with the developer, and he's like, "This is the living room. This is the kitchen. This is the bathroom." And literally, we're standing in the same spot. We're just turning like a couple degrees left to right. And he sees like I'm not buying it. He shows you. He says, "Let me show you something." So he walks me into the bedroom and opens this closet. And the closet is 3 foot wide with, the standard door, and it's 10 feet high, which is, the height of the ceilings. He's like, look at this huge closet. And my eyes just roll back in my head. And I'm like, and at that point, I've had it. So I tell him, look, the average woman is 5'4". If she stretches her hand up and stands on her tiptoes, she's 5'8". That's how high she can reach. Above that, that's dead space. So when it comes to, for most women, when it comes to closets, it's about, and few other things, it's about the width, not about the length. I mean, he just fell on the floor. His assistant went red and ran away, but I just couldn't really take it anymore because these units are so small. I don't even know how you can possibly survive. I mean, these people are living in these small communities. Yes, they've built out these amazing amenities and lounges and gyms and whatnot, but there's none of that available right now. So I think and I've been quoted in the registry of Safa magazine, where I'm saying that these buildings are a great landing site for somebody in San Francisco because they give you, 2 weeks free. They're selling you all these amenities and all these sexiness, but ultimately people realize that they don't want to live across the street from their job. They want to be able to do things on the weekend. They don't want to look at the homeless population or people shooting up in the streets because all these buildings are built in the Soma area where there was room to build. So people, after a while, they move into older stock because San Francisco buildings are extremely old, actually. And maybe not maybe there's no washer and dryer in the unit. Maybe it's shared in the building, but it's in the marina, and you can walk everywhere, and you can go, jogging, and there's every kind of exercise studio out there. So that's becoming, I think people are rethinking the whole sexy white box type of living. And I'm looking forward to, I think I'm going to be seeing a lot more neighborhood requests.
Well, that kind of mirrors what I was hearing from an agent from Connecticut to her area. Her specialty is an hour north of New York, sort of an exodus from New York City. We're seeing that here as well. Our version of Marin would be the main line, sort of suburban communities with larger homes, better schools. We are starting to see that too. Even some of the the empty nesters who live on the main line were thinking about selling, downsizing, and moving into the city, into more of a condo amenity-rich lifestyle. People I'm talking to, a lot of them are like, you know what, I'm having second thoughts about that. Hold off. I don't want to list my property. And it's like, I completely understand. It's just almost like things have reversed in a way in terms of those trends. So it must be tough. You work with a lot of your clients are the owners as well as the tenants. When you're talking, it seems like an unprecedented, risky time for landlords across the board. Many finding themselves in situations that they never planned to, because like yourself, they're savvy investors and they planned their whole life. And we're not talking first-time investors, but people who maybe, here we're seeing developers that are over leveraged and the money's tightened up and the construction's shut down, causing some ripples of risks, as well as, owners of multiple properties. And you're working with the landlords. What kind of advice are you giving them as you're looking at this shifting market?
Well, first of all, I think investing in San Francisco real estate is the riskiest thing you could possibly do, because if you have bought in the last 5 years or even longer, you're not seeing any cash flow. San Francisco is not the cash flowing market. It's the appreciation game. Because if you purchase a condo in Soma, and let's say that same Lumina building, there are 5,000 other condos for rent in that area. Seriously, people are looking at so many options because it's kind of like wine tasting. Like, I don't know how about you, but after third glass, I can't tell the difference anymore. I'm not even a wine person very much. I'm more of a, I'm a bourbon girl, but for wine tasting, like I can't tell it after like one wine from the other after a while. So it's the same thing with shopping for apartment. It's this white box versus that white box versus, and it blends in completely. So I always tell my clients, let's paint the wall red or gray or somehow to stand out. Because if they can't remember me, they'll at least remember the wall. Because otherwise, it's just such a bland. So, so it's a 4,500. They pay, $1.6 million for a property, and the rent is $4,500. Come on. I mean, there is no how to, plus they're huge HOA fees, $1,000 or maybe even more. Um, there are property taxes, there's insurance, so people do not cash flow at all, and it's just almost heartbreaking. I mean, for most of I work with a lot of investors from Hong Kong. One of the main agents I get referrals from, she used to be an investment banker in Hong Kong, and a lot of her business is her friends and former colleagues. And for them, it doesn't really matter. They just really honestly just park the money and they're fine. But then there are such heartbreaking stories. People bought a unit 2 years ago, top of the market, and it's on a very, very busy street. So they're looking to move to Marin, and they want to rent the property because they can't sell it. They're going to lose a lot of money on it. And when it comes for renting, I told them, like, look, even the all three of us sell our souls to the devil, we could get five. Maybe we'll get five. But their carry cost is eight. The monthly carry is eight. So it's honestly just heartbreaking. I spoke with a woman yesterday. They're moving to Seattle. They wanted to rent out their home. And I basically, in a very kind way, gave her a dose of reality. And at the end of the conversation, she started crying. So I was just, I was just horrified. I'm like, you should probably, in her situation, if I were her, I would sell the home because she bought it years ago. But there is no way she thinks she could get $6,500 for it. My guess is 45 max, based on the comps that I'm looking at, because I'm not inventing these numbers. I look to see what else is for rent, because when it comes to rentals, San Francisco is really different. We do not put rentals on MLS here. The only thing that works in San Francisco is, well, two things: Zillow and Craigslist. Craigslist is our number one resource for rentals. So everything, any comps, I mean, some properties can be marketed in Zillow, but some of them are not rented on Craigslist, but everything gets put on Craigslist for sure. It's free, it's easy, it's super effective. We love it here. So I personally advertise, I do far more marketing than anyone else. I advertise on 72 different websites, but to be perfectly honest, 50% of people come from Zillow and 50% come from Craigslist. The locals to go to Craigslist, and people moving to San Francisco go to Zillow. That's it. You don't need anything else. I market on Facebook. I market on Instagram. I market to relocation consultants, but they're not really working right now. So it's and that's what I look at. I look at comps on Zillow and Craigslist, and I'm just have to give these people a dose of reality, because if I don't tell them the truth up front, it'll come back and bite me in the butt, because they'll be like, well, why didn't you tell us that this will be a problem? I learned a long time ago that I need to disclose everything up front. This is a busy street. This is tandem parking. That's not going to work, or this is overpriced. And I'm working with clients right now, for example, they need to get $10,000 for this property. And there's not a chance we're going to get $10,000 for this property. I finally convinced them to drop it to 9, and we're not really getting much either. It's just in what I'm seeing is for higher end properties, there's very little demand, unfortunately, right now. Normally, this is our busiest time of the year. Between April and September, we're just work. And after Labor Day, it slows down, and by after Halloween, it's pretty much dead for the most part. But yeah, it's higher end properties is sitting. and the lower end. So I generally don't do anything under $6,000, but I'm taking properties. I'm seeing a $4,500 one bedroom, one bath, 690 square feet, just to surprise your listeners. And that one we're asking for $4,500, and it's in a brand new building in a great location. Um, so I'm very hopeful for the owner, and she'll be barely breaking even on that, barely.
When I was through the mortgage crisis, when I was working in the second home market on Hawaii, it was different than San Francisco, but resort market, and the clients found themselves in these kinds of situations. This when I started specializing in short sales, to stop the bleeding if there's no way to carry the property. Are you foreseeing an increase in that as a strategy with some of your clients? Not because they can't pay the mortgage, but because it's upside down and it just won't carry itself?
I'm not the right person to answer that question because
Okay.
I do leasing and I'm not very much into sales. I don't know much about sales. I represent myself on the purchase of properties, but when I need to sell something, I hire a professional just because I don't know enough, and I know, I know I don't know enough to be able to represent it. So I can't really tell you, but the thing is, in the foreclosures, if I remember correctly, in 2008, 9, 10, there were obviously some in San Francisco, but I don't know if it was a significant part of the market. Um, I don't think I could answer that question.
That's okay.
To
Are
the
you seeing, as,
Yeah.
as people are, are you starting to see, or do you predict to see an uptick in rental values where people are moving towards, like in Marin, in the suburbs? Do you believe that those prices will go up because of that demand?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think so. Marin has always been busy, and Marin is very expensive. I mean, an average house in Marin is maybe $7,500
Mm-hmm.
and up. I have clients who move into Montana in the next couple of months, and I will be representing their house. We're going to probably ask for $8,500 for it, but it's a different weather than San Francisco. It's a completely different, as you know, it's a completely different lifestyle, and you are only 20 minutes away from the city, from 10 minutes away from the 15 minutes away from the bridge. So it's a beautiful community. It's where you pretty much move when you have kids here. People kind of live in San Francisco. There are a lot of children in San Francisco, obviously, but people kind of like go to kindergarten, and then they realize that the public kindergarten is not good, and the private is expensive, especially if you have more than one child. And people kind of go to Piedmont, Montclair, or East Bay. Walnut Creek is beautiful. Lafayette, very expensive areas, Marin County, or down to Peninsula, and they start commuting to San Francisco. And you kind of have to kind of get this trade-off, because the bridge traffic is always horrible. Bay Bridge has always been bad, and it's awful. And I see all these very expensive cars in sitting in traffic onto the Golden Gate Bridge. So it kind of depends on how flexible your lifestyle is. And I think it's actually with the COVID and our new way of communicating, our new way of
Mhm.
working, I think a lot of people are going to be obviously looking for homes that has a home office, and they can
Mhm.
work from home. A lot of companies, like my husband works for a large corporation, and their CEO said, you know what, I don't care if you ever come back to the office. Yeah, so they just signed a huge lease on in a brand new building, but I don't know if they're ever. I want my husband to go to work, and I think he wants to go to work, but yeah, it will be very interesting as to how we'll live our life going forward. I don't think we're going back to our standard ways of living anymore. And like you said earlier, definitely, I don't think, I think people are kind of like, oh, it's not the same as 2008. It's going to be a V-shaped recovery. And I am very cautious about that. I don't know. I think, shit's going to hit the fan very soon. I think once the numbers of the second quarter, and we really see what a huge impact it was, because we're kind of a um, fear-based society.
Mm.
these days, and everything, and the media is really kind of like, I don't watch any of the main channels, CNN or Fox and NBC or any of those, because they're, to me, they're fear mongers. They're constantly showing something scary, something. I mean, that's the rate. That's what the ratings are all about, and they play up some of the less significant things and downplay some of the more significant things. And because a lot of people watch TV, it's there's always that element of fear that is constantly being sort of like, it's simmering. um, and once all the numbers are going to come out of from the second quarter, it's going to be tough. So for people who are just thinking, oh, you know what, I'm going to get a deal now on a property, you just wait. Deals are coming. It's kind of like buying a property in 2008 and buying a property in 2010, because I feel like 2010 was actually the bottom of the bottom
Mm.
um, of the market. We bought a condo, and we looked at a condo. I don't remember if I told you the story. We looked at a condo in 2009, and it was a two-bedroom, two-bath, $580,000. And we're kind of like, we're not going to buy it. And then in 2010, we bought a unit directly below it, and we paid 405.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
every month we did a complete utter, just go gutted it, remodeled it, and
Yeah.
would wake up every morning, look at the ceiling, and go. So yeah, it
Yeah.
was it was a great sort of like, my husband and I, we are you mentioned we have a lot of real estate a lot of investment properties, but we've been started buying investment properties before we even bought our own home. We got
Mm.
married in 2003, and in 2004, the condo we were renting, they offered us to buy it, and my husband said, "Do you want to travel and invest, or do you want to buy this one bedroom apartment?" And I said, "I want to travel and invest." So we traveled all over the world, and we've been buying properties in Texas, in the Austin area, where we have a lot of properties in Wisconsin right now. And to us, cash flow is the most important thing, because I don't understand how an investment property is not cannot cash flow. It just kind of blows my mind when people are considering an investment property something that doesn't cash flow. I always sort of like, what is your thinking? What is your reasoning? How is that an investment property for you? Okay, well, I guess if you think it's going to be worth significantly more, and and I tell people it probably will be, unless there's some kind of a macroeconomic event. And people are like, well, what could happen? What's a macroeconomic event? Well, COVID-19 is a
Here we
mega
are.
macroeconomic event.
Right.
So wait, what's going on? But you know what I'm seeing? Because I do a lot of Instagram, and it's kind of a huge sort of a source of referrals and business for me, and we can talk about that if you're interested.
Sure.
But I follow pretty much every real estate agent who has an Instagram account in the city, and I watch for people like a lot of the agents who know what they're doing, who have been in business for a while, and who are adapt easily. They do a lot of business. I see sold in contract all the time, and that's fantastic. I really like it, and there are a lot of agents who have sort of furloughed themselves. I see that as well, where they're not spending their time building up their social media presence. They don't believe in it, for example, or they are not, they're feeling depressed, for example, or so it's different for everybody. But those who are kind of go-getters, who want to survive this and thrive through this, those are doing great. I mean, I see Instagram lives, I see them on podcasts, I see them. That's amazing. I really, admire those people and then really look up to them.
I really appreciate your insights, and I agree with you about the V. It's like I did a clip of Prince at Alphabet Street in my broadcast last Saturday, because everybody's saying B, W, L, J. What's it going to be? And I just feel like the one thing that I would say that is similar to 2008 is just what you touched on: is the soundbite news flashes that in our situation are dangerous, because it's a complex situation. It's not just a mortgage crisis. There are so many layers of shifts of wealth and trends and lifestyle and availability of credit, and forbearances that are being done carelessly, putting people at risk of foreclosure when they come due, and so on, that it's just not that simple. It's that came to me in the shower last week was the answer, how's the market? Is complicated, right? There's not an easy answer. But I am hearing similar trends to what you're sharing. And with what we're seeing here and what I'm hearing from agents in other cities on the East Coast, and what that means exactly for condo values, we don't know, right? We'll see how it could be a short-term reaction to having been quarantined, or it could be a long-term impact on values. How do we predict that? It's dependent on perspective, right?
And what the thing is, for condo owners, it's always very tough. For example, the going back to the Lumina building, and next door to it is a high-rise apartment building. So what is this apartment building doing to fill up? They're giving free rent, up to 6 weeks of free rent. So how does the owner of a condo compete with that? You really cannot, and zero deposit. Zero moving costs, right? And here you have to pay your $4,500 first month's rent, and you have to come up with $9,000 to move into this building, which is, it's better. It's better quality, better finishes, but how is it $9,000 better or not? So it's gonna be a significant challenge. That's why I am actually have been sort of, I hate to say it, but turn it down business in some parts of San Francisco, because especially in the high rises, because I know unless it's a building. For example, I'm looking at 2 units in the building called the Austin today at Polk and Pine, which is a really nice. It's a Nob Hill, very nice. It's a brand new, sexy building in a very established neighborhood versus brand new and sexy in a kind of a new and up and coming neighborhood. So those are the ones that will rent significantly better, because people will still want nice and new and some amenities, but they want to be in the established neighborhood. Ultimately, neighborhoods are will trump. Is that a good word to say? California.
Outshine, perhaps. Yeah.
But ultimately, the neighborhoods will trump all the amenities in terms of, in terms of just you get so much more for your money if you are in an established. In San Francisco is really small. It's only, we call it. We say San Francisco is 49 square miles surrounded by reality. Which is absolutely true, because we live in this crazy bubble where on one hand we have some serious social issues with the homeless population is 1% now. It's actual percentage now, and if you go to some of the parts of the mid-market Soma, so because it's extremely visible right now, because there are all these camps, just really literally homeless camps on the streets, and they're not sort of covered up by millennials walking to work with their backpacks or biking to work, because I would kind of like put some sprinkles and sparkles on top of all of that. Now it's front and central, and if you drive through those neighborhoods, it's really, really bad. So we have this, and we get a lot of in my business, I get a lot of social justice hate mail, let's put it this way. On some of the properties that I rent, I get a lot of messages as to, how dare you rent such an expensive apartment, advertise such an expensive apartment in this neighborhood. So it's okay to advertise a $45 million home for sale, but it's not okay to advertise a $45,000 home a month for rent. I mean, where's the logic here? But it's not okay. So it's kind of, I'm used to it at this point, but I do get a lot of, very disappointed messages as to how dare we make San Francisco such an unaffordable city. And I get it. I mean, I work really hard to be where I am. I'm an immigrant. I came from nothing. I came to this country in the 90s, went to, everything I have, I earned. So when somebody tells me, for example, we bought a home, we bought our home, and we completely remodeled, and the city came out and repaved the sidewalk. They basically redid they did the concrete, and somebody in the wet concrete scratched "Eat the Rich" on that concrete block in front of my house. I'm like, how dare you? I mean, what do you know about me? I work my butt off. My husband works. We're both immigrants. We come from nothing. We came to this country. We put ourselves through school. We are where we are because we work very hard.
Yeah.
And here you are. You tell me. Luckily, it was still wet enough that we were able to scratch it off. But it's just like, you know what? How dare you? I mean, that's why you are where you are in life, because you think this way.
Well, it's interesting. I mean,
So.
I lived in San Francisco during the beginnings of gentrification. I left in 2000 when the dot-com bubble was hitting. And we viewed it as expensive in the 80s and 90s, but we run through that same sentiment in Philadelphia, which has gentrified tremendously, and you have different ripples through that. Now in Philly, when landlords, and they're not in the luxury category that you are, but there's kind of a movement using COVID-19 as a reason to not pay rent. In fact, there's groups on Facebook like it's a social justice movement, to not because you got laid off necessarily. Certainly some people are in those difficult situations, but almost using this opportunity, since evictions, there's a stay on evictions, to just say, hey, everybody that rents, you should not pay rent. Are you seeing, maybe the laws there are different, but are you seeing any pushback in that direction? And also, what are your landlords doing? Like, I think some are trying to secure longer term leases with their good tenants to weather through the ripples that are hitting right now. Are you seeing people
Well,
utilizing
San
strategies like
Francisco,
that?
so San Francisco, it has draconian landlord laws. Right
Mhm.
now, every property in San Francisco, regardless of when it was built, is under just cause eviction, which means if the person moves in into your luxury condo or into a rent-controlled apartment, they may never move out. You cannot get rid of them. You have to buy
Mhm.
them out if you want to move back in, or if you want to sell it. For properties, for certain properties, you can raise rent, but you can't raise rent for the purposes of getting rid of them. For example, you want to sell your condo, so you raise the rent for them to move out. They could, if you sell it after they move out, they could go back and sue you for evicting them for the purposes of selling. So you have to be very careful. Yes, there are plenty of those movements out there. And in San Francisco, it's the law that you don't have to pay rent until January 1st now. It might be
Wow.
extended even further, but all of that rent will be due on January 1st. So people who are smart and, they just understand that they'd rather pay it monthly than not pay it at all. And it's always best to work with your landlord, always best to explain to them, better to accept, better to pay half rent or
Mhm.
some percentage of rent than no percentage. My landlords are lucky that none of them have seen this. At least I haven't heard anything. Usually when when I don't do property management, I only do the leasing part. Once a tenant has
Mhm.
keys, that's it. I'm out of the conversation. And this is where I don't want to hear from tenants. I don't want to hear from landlords. That's why I do not keep in touch with any of my clients. I don't even have a CRM because I don't want to know. I mean, I know who they are. I know what their lease ends. It's on my head and on my Excel spreadsheet. But I know that if I'm getting a call in the middle of the lease, it's either two things. There's a problem, which luckily there isn't one, or the tenants decided to move out, for example, because for example, like I have a property, they placed them in November, they're moving out to Marin because their daughter needs different type of school situation.
Mhm.
They couldn't find the right school for her in the city, so they're moving out. So I work with them on the lease termination and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, for the most part, I generally do such a good job um, kind of understanding the tenants, and I'm very good at doing the conversation up front and understand, because a lot of times people are perfect on paper, but when you start dealing with them, they're just assholes. honestly. And I've seen so many people. He's a VP of this or that, and he went to Harvard or some Stanford, whatever. Great, but you start dealing with them, and it's just a jerk. And do you want a tenant like that? Nobody wants a tenant like that, because you know what? Shit happens.
Yeah.
Things break, and we may not be able to get your dishwasher fixed in 24 hours. So you just have to we have to work with you. And if the tenant is not, easy to work with them, we don't want them. We'd rather have less money and get a great tenant. And this is where I come in, because in all of my years doing this, knock on wood, I don't know what I have in wood here,
I'll
but
knock
I
over
haven't had
here.
any issues except one where I told my client that this lady who wants to use applying for an apartment, there's something wrong with her. I cannot request psychiatric evaluations, unfortunately. Uh, but I could sense that, she was standing in the doorway. She was pretty much blocking the way for other people, because it was an open house for other people to walk in. It was really strange. So I told my owner, she qualifies, everything's great, but my sixth sense is that something's off. And my owner took her anyway. She said, well, she's paying this great rate. Let's take her. And then she called me 6 months later. She said, Ina, I should have listened to you. This woman sits at home, works from home, looks at white walls, and sees mold everywhere. And she wouldn't let
Wow.
my contractor in to see the place, to inspect it. She called every government organization in the city to complain about the unit, and she doesn't let anyone in to review it. And she spent thousands of dollars on lawyers. So my owner she was just, that's what she had to deal with. And I was like, I told you, I will re-rent this apartment for free for you,
Yeah.
because that's what I would do. That's what I do for
Mhm.
my clients. But
Mhm.
I warned you, there's
Mhm.
something off. So luckily, knock on wood, none of my clients are seeing anything. And of course, anybody could move in and stop paying rent until December. But ultimately, there's nothing you can do about it. But ultimately, it's going to be due anyway. So it's not very. If you can't afford it, then you should pay the rent.
So if you don't mind my switching gears, I was fascinated when we talked privately about your comments about the economy and, the quote about the Rothschilds. And so if you don't mind me just putting you on the spot, in terms of advice about wealth building going through the next couple of years, you mentioned Texas, you mentioned other places that you buy properties. What would put a different hat on instead of the leasing agent, as a savvy investor with your background? Um, where are you looking, or where would you suggest to somebody to keep their eye on, looking for opportunities during these changing times?
Um, so I think, and I could be totally wrong, but I think the way we're going to view our economy and our world is that we need to be dependent on ourselves. So we cannot be dependent on China for masks and drugs and rubber gloves and all these things. We're going to need to be making that all here domestically, and a lot of other things. So I think Mid-America is going to be seeing a lot of employers coming back. And so, for example, like Foxconn is building a 3 million square foot factory in Milwaukee. And we own some properties in Milwaukee, and there are people who are buying up units by hundreds of thousands in
Mhm.
Milwaukee area, because they believe in it. I hear Detroit is has been doing extremely well over the last 10 years. There's a gentleman that I follow on Instagram. I think his handle was at Invest with Ace, or Invest Ace, something like that. He's a young guy. He's like 30 years old, and he buys properties in Kentucky, Indiana, and all these areas. And I just saw him. I just saw his post yesterday. He was selling a triplex for $115,000. The rents is $1,750 in rents. That's incredible. A standard, basically, investors formula is your rent times 100 is what you should be paying for the property. That's sort of like a tried and true. This is what it should be. It's not even close in San Francisco or most of the country, but generally that's the case. And in this case, I'm actually going to be probably working with him to see because he buys these properties, he just kind of renovates them and does a little bit of work with them, and he resells them at a profit. So I have no idea what he paid for it to sell it for $115,000. But these are the kind of areas I think we should all take a look at is, Tennessee, Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, because ultimately that's kind of like the heart of America. And if you're into like quick appreciation games, which if you time it right, you can do very, very well in San Francisco. But ultimately, real estate is a long-term game. It's not
Yes.
a short-term game. It's very rare. It's very like super niche markets where if you bought in Miami in 2010, and sold in 2019, you made a ton of money on a property. Same thing in San Francisco, right?
Right.
But you kind of have to think of it more of a long-term situation. You have to look at the property. For example, like I sold a couple of properties recently because they're cash flow and they're great properties. But once the tenant moves out, I have to completely remodel it. It will cost me like $30,000-$40,000 to remodel it. So that kills my cash flow. But if I'm in it for 30 years, it doesn't matter,
Right.
right? But if I'm not, and most people don't have the patience of that kind, then it's either some kind of flips or some kind of properties that have already been remodeled, and you don't have to worry about it. So there are different strategies about it. But ultimately, Texas has kind of been tough to invest in the sense that Texas is endless. I mean, you can build to the border of Oklahoma, to the border of New Mexico. I mean, it's just like one huge, it's just one huge, city could be, right? So in Texas, we noticed that property values have gone up, but the rents haven't gone up at all over the 10 years that we've owned in Texas. I mean, maybe like
Oh,
by $100, $200. So it's always, we did, get some appreciation out of it, but, in terms of cash flow, and we have two kids, so it's really important for us to have cash flow to pay for school, to pay for all the extracurricular activities, camps and whatnot, right? And all the dude ranch that they want to go to and do all these kind of things. So to me, it's really, it just depends on what you want. Do you want quick appreciation? Do you want long-term solution? How comfortable are you? Because I've never invested in San Francisco ever. And I don't think I ever will. I could do probably flips in San Francisco. That could be lucrative. Um, but going back to your the Rothschild quote, the Rothschild said back in the during the Napoleonic Wars in early 1800s, they said buy when there's blood in the streets. That's when you buy something. The story goes is that Rothschilds told they spread the rumor that the English lost the Battle of Waterloo, which they actually won. But they spread the news that they lost. So the market basically crashed in England, in London, and they bought all of that real estate for nothing, for pennies on the dollar or pennies on the pound. And then the truth came out, and all those properties were worth significantly more. That's the story.
mm,
So the blood is still coming, I think. I hope not. I hope not. But you kind of have to go with the flow. Like investing in San Francisco is all about timing it correctly, right? For example,
right.
there was this dip, like a second dip for 1 second dip for like in November and December of 2019. I think Trump tweeted something, or 18 December, November, December of 18th. Trump tweeted something, the market crashed and everybody lost a lot of money. And, properties were all of a sudden in San Francisco, there were no multiple bids, because in San Francisco, it is very often that people pay $1 million over asking price.
Wow.
Yes, it happens, right? So there's always, every property that goes out has multiple offers. It's very common. 20 offers, 50 offers. I mean, it's insane. But at that moment of time, there was a property in the market. It was a 2-unit building, and the market dipped. There were no offers, and we made an offer, and we bought a property for 200,000 under asking.
Wow.
3 months later, this same property would have sold for at least 200 over asking. But the owners were kind of, they were, not sure what's going to happen. Is this the start of the recession? Because we've already had all those years of, just those fat years, and people like, oh my God, the recession, the recession. Everybody was talking about it. Then it all bounced right back 3 months
Right.
later. But there was that one dip, and we got super lucky, and we bought the home that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all about timing it correctly and being patient and watching it and knowing, kind of like having the pulse of the market, and having a good Instagram account, because I found this property that I'm sitting in right now on Instagram.
Well,
I'm
I
a
found you on
consultative.
Instagram, so you
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 found
did
me on
that.
Instagram, right? It's incredible. Like
Yeah.
this property never showed up in any of my searches. So I was driving somewhere, and all of a sudden I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I see this property on the market, and it's open house. And so I make a left, I come in, I look at it, and I call my husband. I'm like, you need to see this. This is it. This is our home. And there you go. So you
Fantastic.
just have to kind of watch that. But ultimately, long term, I would trust my money to like real America, really,
Mhm.
because that's where people are working. They're raising their children. That's where they're born. That's where they live the entire time. I think a lot of manufacturing jobs are going to be coming back, and we're just going to have to be more reliant on ourselves, because you know what, if another pandemic, I read recently that the scientists are finding, because all the glaciers are melting, the scientists are finding all these pathogens that are 15,000 years old, and they don't even know what they are, much less having having a vaccine for it. So these pandemics are going to be happening over and over, I think. So we just need to be kind of adaptable and flexible, and be ready for it, because we can't have, like, look at our nurses, our doctors don't have enough gloves, they don't have enough masks, they don't have enough anything. It's been, the entire country has been scrambling. The horror stories that you hear from New York, it's just, I'm so grateful to all these nurses and doctors and people who are working in these conditions and saving lives. It's amazing. But becoming
Absolutely.
more reliant on ourselves is important.
I think when we look at, it's just an observation that when we look at the impact, and we're talking about market and renters and shifting lifestyles, but it's also mindset and emotions that have an impact. I believe I heard Tom Ferry speaking recently, and he was talking about this being a moment in time, and I appreciated him acknowledging that, like one of those moments in
Mhm.
time, like 9/11. And he was flashing back that, a lot of people felt they would never fly after 9/11.
Mhm.
A lot of people maybe
Mhm.
feel like now they'll never buy real estate, because of what we just been through. However, we do, we just do it differently. People started
Mhm.
traveling again, but they're doing it differently. And
Mhm.
in reality, since 9/11, and travel's never the same, we all with the security
Mhm.
and so on. So
Mhm.
the mindset, I don't know that this has, I think, caught the world. For me, we didn't live through 1918, right? So, and that
Mhm.
the Spanish flu wasn't very commonly known about, wasn't covered very heavily. And this level of pandemic, of course, is someplace we've never been before. It's interesting to see as we move through the phases of recovery. I don't think that mindset is going to go away. Like you're talking about, the idea of being able to have space, to be able to grow your garden, to be able to have place for the kids to play should you need to stay home, the possibility of working from home, which now as realtors, we do that and have done that, but most corporations haven't been open to it. And we're seeing an increase of New Yorkers coming to our area because of that. Their corporations are saying, okay, it's okay if you work from home. We just need you here 1 or 2 days a week. Sort of like the move to Marin. They could come down to Philadelphia or
Mhm.
go to Connecticut, hop on the train in an hour and a half, and be in Manhattan for their day in the office. Some of those lifestyle shifts and perception shifts, that will take, it could be forever that we just look at things differently. It's hard to say.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
again, mindset. There's a whole generation that grew up that doesn't know any different. from flying. They know to take their shoes off and their
Yeah.
belts and take everything out of pockets, and it's just totally normal. They didn't know you could just, go greet somebody at the gate. When my husband and I started dating, we met in 1999, and we were dating long distance. I would pick him up at the airport, and I would just meet him at the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the way to do it. And now most people don't even remember that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's totally. But you know what? The thing is that I think it's been good in many senses. I mean, I'm kind of grateful to this pandemic in many ways, because I've been able to accomplish things that I've never would have done, that I never like. I would never do a live TV. I'm horrified. I would be horrified of that, or video of any kind. Believe it or not, I'm normally just scared to death of something like this. But here I am. Look at me. I don't even know how many people are watching. I don't know how many people will see it.
And you've been on so many
Um,
podcasts as a guest speaker.
I
You're all over
I
the place
have.
now.
And that's kind of thanks to this pandemic. And there's so many things I've been able to accomplish, and so many people I've been able to connect with, and so many, I guess, personal mountains I have been able to conquer. And um, so it's been okay. So it's just heartbreaking to watch people, who are out of jobs, or who've
Mhm.
been laid off. I mean, Compass laid off a lot of people, that. My marketing associate was laid off, and I really, really enjoyed working with him. So, I know he's doing okay. And on top of being laid off, his landlord tried to evict him. So I helped
Oh,
him with that, to try to, advise him on to how to deal with that, because that was totally illegal. But yeah, so it's just, people are finding their ways and adjusting it. And sometimes, you know what? I read somewhere, someone posted, it's not about the time of becoming someone, and now is the time to unbecome someone you
mm,
are not. I
mm.
thought that was such a precious thing, such a precious thought, because we kind of get caught up in our life and who we think we are, but we never really have the time to think who we are really are and what we like to do. And I see a lot of people baking, people are, doing all kinds of painting, crafts. And that they never had time for. It's so incredible. And I think a lot of people will kind of realize what is it that they really want to do in life. What is it that they, maybe there's somebody, who was it that said, was it Napoleon Bonaparte, or somebody who said that there's nothing worse than a person who's not in the right business,
Mhm.
so who's not in the right path, who's not on the right path in life. Maybe somebody who could be a brilliant painter is a struggling real estate agent or something like that. So it's a great time to really rethink what you want to do.
Well, we're fortunate to have the internet and to have social media, because certainly in these uncertainties and a painful financial situation, there's going to be a lot of emerging businesses as well. People finding new
Hmm.
talents, new entrepreneur ventures, which we both see on social media quite a bit. I agree with you. Like, I've done market updates on and off, for 10 years on video, just as I'm trying to educate my clients. But this whole live broadcasting was out of my comfort zone, but my passion in trying to get information to the community that could be helpful at such a confusing time. And it's been a wonderful experience and a great opportunity, to network, as if I could fly to San Francisco and have coffee with you, you know? So
One day, one day,
one
one
day. I
day.
love to travel, so this way we get to do it virtually. I really appreciate you taking time to meet with us today. And anybody that has questions, feel free to comment below. We'll, forward them. We'll keep the discussion going. If you couldn't make it today and you're watching it later, this is meant to be a venue of open discussion. Agents from different brokerages, I've had lawyers on, just to keep the conversation going, to help each other, and more
Mhm.
importantly, to help our clients and consumers with real, live, pertinent information, so you can start to see. Nobody has definitive answers, I don't think, but we can report to you these trends that we're starting to see. And that's the best that one can do in terms of trying to extrapolate, I think, and make decisions that are going to make sense for your family now and into the future, it's important to not wait. If there's trouble in the water, don't wait. Reach out, talk to an expert. Investigate, get more information on the market, stay in touch with the micro market that you're in. Whether it's like the difference between San Francisco and Marin. There's different trends. It's 20 miles apart. We're faced that same multiple reality situation, the greater Philadelphia area, or really any city with the suburbs and different neighborhoods and lifestyle. But I find it very interesting, and I think it extrapolates to any community, what you're talking about, the location being important, more so than the in-building amenities, is more so what almost, if I heard you say it right, it's like the amenity of the neighborhood being important. And I would echo that here.
Yeah, and I would also add that trust your sixth sense, trust your gut. What is it telling you? I mean, is this the right decision for you? Does it feel right? Do you walk into a place and you absolutely love it and you can't really, you wake up tomorrow and you're going to still think about it? It's really about, you'll know. I mean, you may know that you're done with this home and you want to live in a high rise, or you may, your sixth sense is telling you no, don't make that decision, don't move. So I think it's just about kind of feeling what the universe is telling you, really, and trusting your sixth sense. That's the biggest thing. So a lot of people just kind of make decisions. I mean, I see a lot of people who make decisions based on not so much their feeling, but what the agent is telling them, or what the trends are. And trends are perceptions of other people, right? So what is your perception? What do you feel? How do you feel about this? That's one of the biggest questions I ask when I'm touring people, like, how does this place feel? Because if it doesn't feel right, don't do it.
I agree wholeheartedly. And like with buyers right now, two different scenarios. I'm working with a young first-time homebuyer couple, and I had their mom's paying for it, but I had an honest conversation with her and with them that this may not be the time to buy, because we are seeing we're seeing pent-up demand and multiple offers in their micro market, and that renting for another year or two is a very valid option, and that I'm really only here to help them, and they need to think about that. On the other hand, a young couple I work with we found the off-market opportunity for them while we were shut down. I found something that they were literally dreaming about, walking past every day. It was just the perfect fit. So yes, that makes sense. You can't pass up that dream home that you're literally dreaming about in the middle of the night, And then it makes sense understanding that they're and this is what I would share with, like, from 2008, those homes that I helped short sale, they came back in value. If you can leverage through shifting markets, the long game of real estate that you refer to, in most markets, there will be, it's just on paper, it goes up or down a little bit, but in the long game, if there's an intrinsic high value, it's not a trend, one can feel pretty confident that, there will be stability in your equity long term. So.
Yeah, I agree. As long if you're into it long term, you can buy anytime. But if it's something that you're gonna be in for a little bit of time, and then, because a lot of people I'm talking to, we want to live in here for a couple of years and then we want to rent it out. Well, those are two different properties you should be buying, because just because you like it yourself, it's not gonna be very interesting to potential tenants. It's gonna be, because investment property, it has to be interesting and palatable to most people, right? If you buy something very specific, it's very difficult to rent. So those are, you can't think of something that's your home and an investment property. These are usually different things. And so, yeah.
Well, we've kept you for an hour. I appreciate your time. I know you're very, very busy, and, it's just delightful. I love to hear your insights. Of course, be sure to follow her on Instagram. Her information's here. I've got it on all of the posts. You see her website, her Facebook page. Be sure to follow her. You can see what a dynamic professional Ina is. And I do appreciate that you are a straight shooter. you know, and like I
Thank
said,
you.
there's no edits. You're free to say whatever you like.
I kept myself under, on the leash as much as I could.
Not necessary, but
But
okay.
yeah, but usually I'm very, I like to say how it is. I mean, sugarcoating is not my thing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very happy that you reached out. I'm very happy that you heard my other podcast, the Thoughtful Realtor. There's always something comes out of. That's why I'm so open to opportunities, and I think everyone should be. Is that you never know what walk through this door. There are other doors. There are windows that you can climb through. So it's always good. I mean, say yes to everything unless it feels wrong.
Thank you so much. And on our way
All
out, I'm
right.
going to share a little bit of what's behind us. Here is the Golden Gate Bridge, for those of you that may not be familiar. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.